Hey, so I'm here. I said I was going to do a reaction video to the top 25 rankings that just came out, and honestly, I gotta say, there was a lot of movement that happened this week, and some of the most surprising things, though, were non-movements. Um, I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. So, at number 25, last week it was Houston. This week, it's Wisconsin. They creep back into the top 25 after losing a few games early on in the season. Their win streak they've accrued has gotten them back up. Toledo was number 24. They dropped out after losing on, I believe that was Tuesday night. Houston moves up into that spot from number 25. UCLA used to be number 23. That is now North Carolina. They creep up with a 7-1 record and a chance to run out. They've already almost clinched their side of the ACC. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. This was one of the surprising ones to me. The non-move. Temple remained at number 22. I felt like after them winning, they should have moved up at least one spot or so, especially considering who's at number 21. Number 21 used to be Northwestern, is now Memphis. Memphis dropped from 13th to 21st, but they're still ranked ahead of Temple. And now I know Temple, I guess I understand it because Temple has the same record as them now, but still. Number 20 used to be Mississippi State. This week it is Navy. Navy is 7-1 on the season. Their one loss coming to Notre Dame, who's ranked in the top 10. So that's actually a really great thing for Navy. And they've made a statement. This is one of the other surprising things. They've made a statement that if Navy makes it to the end of the season and are in contention for a New Year's Bowl or the playoffs, the playoff committee will postpone their final rankings until the week after the Army-Navy game, which is really awesome in my opinion. Next, I had 19th was Texas A&M. They lost. They have dropped out of the rankings. UCLA moved up from 23rd to 19th. So they did a bit of moving after a convincing win last week. Next, 18th used to be Ole Miss. They lost. They're out again. Now it is Northwestern at 18th. They were 21st, so they moved up 3 spots. It's not a bad move. Next was number 17 last week was Michigan. It's Mississippi State this week. They moved up from number 20, 3 spots as well. This one kind of bugs me, and I understand Florida State is still number 16, and what bugs me about it is they lost, and they didn't move at all. Now, I'm not saying they should have dropped out of the top 25. They are still a 2-loss team. That is still a good place for them to be at. But I feel there were a few of these teams that should be ahead of Florida State. They lost to Clemson, who's number 1, but still, I think they should have moved a little. Staying in one spot is not really cool. Next, number 15 used to be Oklahoma. It is now TCU after TCU lost to who did they play? I forget who they played, but they lost. They lost to Oklahoma State. After losing to Oklahoma State, TCU fell from 8th down to 15th. Number 14 was Oklahoma State last week. They've moved up, but Michigan comes up to take their spot, jumping from 17th to 14th, 3 spots. Next, 13th was Memphis, as we already covered. They dropped down to 21st. And Michigan State is now 13th, having dropped from 7th. Next was number 12, Utah. Used to be number 12 last week. This week it is Oklahoma. After a good win for Oklahoma over Iowa State, they move up 3 spots to number 15. Next is number 11, used to be Stanford. It is now Florida. Florida won their game against Vanderbilt, but they won by 2 points by kicking a field goal as time expired. Or not as time expired, but in the final minutes of the game. So they only dropped 1 spot, but it actually is a big thing because it keeps them out of the top 10 at this point, which is a point they don't want to be out of the top 10. Number 10 used to be Florida. We just talked about that. Is now Utah. They moved up 2 spots into the top 10. Iowa was number 9, but they've moved up this week, and LSU takes their spot, falling from number 2 to number 9 after the beat down from Alabama. Number 8 was TCU. We've already discussed what happened to them. Oklahoma State is now number 8. So Oklahoma State beat TCU and took their spot on the rankings, which is kind of satisfying for a lot of people. Obviously not if you're a TCU fan, but number 7 was Michigan State last week. We already discussed how they dropped to 13th. This week it is Stanford. Stanford takes over the number 7 spot, comes out, I believe, plus 5 spots from last week. So they're up in the rankings now, which they have a key matchup at the end of the season against Notre Dame, but they also have a game against Oregon this week, which is going to be an interesting one, especially to see which Oregon team shows up. Next, number 6 Baylor is still number 6 Baylor. Their win against Kansas State, while it was Kansas State, and I actually do think Kansas State is a good team, it was too close for the committee, but not a loss, so they didn't want to move them down, so they left them at number 6, which I thought was an appropriate move. Number 5 used to be Notre Dame. It is now Iowa. Iowa jumped up from number 4 to number 5, from number 9 to number 5. That's 4 spots, which is actually really good for Iowa, and it sets up an interesting table here because, well, let's say Ohio State wins out in the regular season. Let's say Iowa wins out in the regular season. You've got Iowa and Ohio State in the Big Ten championship with each other. So naturally, if they're still ranked in the top 5 with each other, the 3 teams that are in the top 5, no matter where they are ranked, will make the playoffs supposedly. Obviously, it could do a bunch of move arounds, but still. Working our way from the bottom. Number 4 was Alabama last week. They've moved up after beating LSU. Notre Dame moves up 1 spot to claim that number 4 spot. Next is number 3 Ohio State. Stays number 3 Ohio State. One of the 4 teams that did not move this week. But while it is frustrating for Ohio State fans to have a 1-loss team ranked above them, you do have to look at it this way. You're not moving and you're staying in the top 4, so it's you got a chance, and they did this to you last year. So LSU was number 2 last week. We talked about that already, and you know who's going to take their spot. Alabama beat them, takes number 2, and that only leaves 1 team left, and that's Clemson. I actually, as far as the top 4 go, I kind of called it. I had a couple of scenarios I thought it could have been. I thought it could have been. I knew it was going to be Clemson. I was almost certain it was going to be Alabama and then Ohio State, but it could have been Ohio State and then Alabama, either way. But that 4th spot, I was throwing it to either Notre Dame or Oklahoma State, actually. I thought Oklahoma State could have moved a little higher than 8th. I actually was going to put them at like 6th or 7th. So it's a really interesting switch up here. I feel like this is actually a solid top 4. However, if Iowa were to move up into that top 4, it would still be a solid top 4. And I can't, honestly, if Stanford was one of the teams if Stanford beats Notre Dame at the end of the year and takes their spot in the playoffs, it would still be a solid top 4. There are a lot of teams in the top 8, top 10 that I think could do really well in the playoffs. So it's going to be an exciting finish to the year. We only have 6 undefeated teams left, and one of them is guaranteed to go down before the end of the season. So, I mean, because 2 of them would, if they go out through the rest of the season, they have to play each other. So there's no guarantee that we're going to have all undefeated teams in the playoffs. But that's the reaction video. Let me know what you guys think. Give a like, comment below, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and have a nice night.